Hi, and welcome to Learning Lounge. I'm Sheila McManus, professor in the Department of History and Religion, and I was the Board of Governors teaching chair from 2014 to 2016. With me today is Chris Mattatall from the Faculty of Education, Board of Governors teaching chair from 2023 to 25. So Chris, tell us a bit more about yourself.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, by the way. It's great to be here. And yes, 23 to 25 is what I'm slated to be the Board of Governors teaching chair, and I'm thrilled for the position, and I'm thrilled to be working with, loved working with our past board chair, and I'm thrilled to be working with our new board chair. We have a number of things we want to accomplish, but before we get there, I teach in the Faculty of Education, Associate Professor of Educational Psychology and Inclusion. And I teach courses in Ed Psych, but also exceptionalities and cognition.
And I want to get into a little bit what do you think of your first year's board chair, everything that you've accomplished, but maybe we could lead into that with the research project that you were working on before you became board chair, but that you have also been working on in the past year alongside other Board of Governors chair work.
Right, well, thanks for asking that. I was reading an article a couple years ago of a fellow, I won't mention the person's name, but they had put out a statement that university professors don't need any type of training. Because their argument was, we've got enough already, we're good enough already. We are graduate students, we go through the system, we are in lots of classes, and we see how it's done. Therefore, all we need is a real passion for our subject area and to know our subject area really well. Now, I agree that's important, but I didn't think it was enough. So I thought, well, I really wonder what professors who have never had, or instructors who have never had any pedagogical training or any background whatsoever, who have been nominated for awards, who have won awards or nominated by their deans, how they became such good teachers if they didn't have training, and what they thought about it. So I put out a call. It was interesting. I put out a call, and like 99% of everybody who received an invitation said, I would love to talk to you. So I interviewed a group of professors and instructors across the university in all faculties, and I simply asked them, like, what informs your instruction? How did you become an award-winning instructor? How did you become such a good instructor? And so we'd had 2-hour interviews over coffee or dessert or whatever, and I had hundreds of pages of transcripts, and I hired an analyst, and we looked at it very closely, and we found out that there were like 7 gigantic themes that came out of this, and it's still going into publication now, and still going out into, still analyzing it and writing it. But what we found is that care, the fact that these professors actually loved and cared for not only their job, but their students. And it actually translated into how they behaved. They were extremely hardworking. They wanted to make sure they got the details right. They wanted to know they knew their subject area well so that they could present their materials to their students properly and effectively. And that kind of drove them to be good at what they did. So they'd go to the teaching center, they would go to Spark, they'd go to a conference, they'd read books, they would get articles, they'd ask colleagues, they'd take on a mentor. And all of these behaviors actually helped them to become great teachers. And so I presented at Spark this year on We Became Teachers. And it's a process of becoming. And from that project, I thought, man, I would like to assist in that. Maybe there's a way I could help teachers who were new to the field. Maybe they just finished their PhD, but they don't have any pedagogical training. Maybe I could work with what the Instructional Skills Workshop does, and with what Reset is put on the Teaching Center, and what the Teaching Center does. And so I put forward a proposal to do a project, and that's when I was asked to be the Board of Governors teaching chair.
Mm-hmm. I think it's such a great project for the board chair, right? I mean, the board chairs have to have their own, I think, specific projects, and a research project like yours is so perfect for the role. What else have you been doing? You're 1 year into the job. How have you been able to combine that research with your other interests, with the reasons that brought you to the board chair in the first place, the other projects the chair gets involved with? What else have you been up to for the past year? What have you been doing with yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do have a teaching load and a research program that I do in my faculty, but when it comes to the teaching center, I've loved my work with the teaching center, because It's what I like about it. It's I want to use the word organic, but it actually, a lot of what I do arises out of needs that come up. So, for instance, this year a number of professors said, we're struggling in a certain area, in areas of knowing what to do with certain students who are struggling in class or have difficulty in class. Maybe it's high anxiety, behavioral problems, missing out because they're working and they're not coming to classes. How can we work with these students? So I joined a group the Teaching Center organized, and we are working together across campus to figure out ways to provide supports for faculty members in the future to deal with students that are really struggling. And from that came another group of professors who came to the Teaching Center and said, look, we're seeing some students that are having executive function problems. They're having trouble attending, they're having trouble staying with it, they're having trouble when they get thrown a curveball to readjust and to be flexible in their thinking. What can we do with those students? So I joined another task force, if you want, or a group, and we again are working together and gathering resources and gathering people to build resources for faculty across campus to say, hey, have you thought of using this? Have you thought of doing that? So both of those are still ongoing. They're actually kind of in their infancy. And so we've been doing that. But we've also, one of the goals of the Teaching Center is to put a spotlight on teaching. And this year, the Spark Symposium had the greatest attendance that we've had and I think across the university, with the work that the Teaching Center has done, past board chairs, teaching fellows, they've raised this desire among faculty to say, I want to be a good teacher too. I want to make sure my students are doing well. And so a lot of people came to Spark this year, a lot of really good speakers, a lot of good topics. And during one of our conversations in the Teaching Center, somebody said, hey, what could we do to maybe spark interest on a yearly, ongoing basis? And one idea, there's lots of ideas coming forward, but one idea I had was maybe we could do a campaign where we highlight what students think good teaching is. And so working with the Teaching Center and with some fantastic staff there, we've been interviewing students over the course of the last couple months. And we've been finding some really fantastic ideas coming out of the mouths of students, where students say, good teaching to me is when my professor does this. And so what we've done is we've taken their picture, enlarged it, put it on one of those stand-up banners with their quotes, and we're going to put those 20 or so banners all over campus this year, so that when you see it, it just thinks, yeah, that's what good teaching is. And out of the mouths of our students. So.
Do you find there's a lot of overlap? So you had this research program going on, and the 7 big themes that emerged out of, what makes great teaching. Do you find that students and these 20 quotes that you've chosen, that they are reflecting back that, the 7 points that teachers think, we work on to be better, are also, that's exactly what our students see as good teaching? You
are absolutely right. Seeing a lot of overlap. And I think good teaching is good teaching. And so whether it's at this campus or another campus, this subject or that subject, good teaching is good teaching. And so there is going to be a lot of repetition. There's going to be a lot of, I've seen that before. And the reason you've seen that before is that's good teaching. So I'll give you an example. The Instructional Skills Workshop has a component where they talk about bridging, as you well know. So good bridging exercises are good bridging exercises. And when you have when you have students who are really busy out in their world, in their social world, and their daily, whatever they're doing, they're coming from work or they're coming from home or whatever they're doing, and they're coming into class, and we want them to focus on history or chemistry or whatever, to get them to turn off all the noise and really focus in on the subject area. If there's some really good ideas on how to do that quickly and effectively so that students are buying in instantly and they're on topic instantly, all the faculty and instructors in this campus want to know that. And so we've got the resources on the Teaching Center, like a Reset has all these great resources, and we have ongoing resources that we're making available through the Teaching Center. And I think we're seeing it over and over and over. And we're and as one of the teaching center people said recently, because I asked them, I said, am I redundant? Like some of the work that I'm doing, is it redundant? And they said, no, we want it in multiple forms so that I may not go on Reset and get it, but I might see it through the video series that you're developing this year, or I might see it at Spark, or I might get it from one of my colleagues who's now my mentor or whatever. So we want to put it in multiple places across the campus so that people can use multiple means to get this information.
Yeah, it's just like what we know about student learning, right? That multiple touch points.
Yes.
So too for our colleagues,
Yes.
right? Whether it's a crisis point or kind of an ongoing question, they want to get better at something.
That's right.
They're all going to be accessing it, and they come to that information in different ways at different times. And it needs to be there for them in multiple formats. As you say, good teaching is good teaching. It's all on the same page. We know what that looks like.
That's exactly right. And my project for the Board of Governors Teaching Chair actually was born out of. I'm a very simple person, so I often say to my students, I'm a slow reader. I take my time. I'm a slow writer. It's painful for me. I take a great deal of effort to write. Everything I do takes effort. Like I'm an average person trying to do this, above average work, and it's very difficult. So I like things in small chunks. So a couple of years ago, I read a book came out. Actually, I got it right here. It's kind of Tiny Habits. And B.J. Fogg is a professor at Stanford University. And when he wrote this book, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. Because what he said, a lot of us have New Year's resolutions that we break almost instantly. He says the reason we do that is because we have these gigantic goals. Like, I'm going to learn to play the cello this year. Okay, that's a great goal. But you really do need to break that down into small little goals and tiny little habits in order for it to become a big habit. And we get overwhelmed with our goals sometimes, and we get frustrated, and we give up on our New Year's resolution. So he said, what you should do is you should develop tiny little habits that you can align with what you're currently doing. So if you're trying to learn a new language, for instance, and you have vocabulary, maybe while you're brushing your teeth in the morning, you have your vocabulary words. You're going to brush your teeth anyway, so maybe you can stack that habit onto the new habit of learning these words. Well, from this book, James Lang wrote this book called Small Teaching.
That's the book I was just thinking of. Yeah.
And so he even mentions tiny habits in his book. And so what he did is he said, you know what? And he wrote this for university and college professors. He said, it's overwhelming to take a person who has never taught before and say, hey, go teach this class of 100 students and be good at it. But there are many little things that you can add on to your daily practice. Not overwhelming, not asking you to do great big giant things, small little things like, how do you conduct the first 5 minutes? How do you bridge from the students out in a busy life into your topic area? How do you ask questions? How do you organize groups? How do you pass things out? All these tiny little teachings. So I thought, well, what I'd like to do is to add on to what the Teaching Center already has, I would like to do a series of 3-minute PD videos. And again, this comes out of Stanford. Stanford had a 2-minute PD thing that they did a few years ago, and I worked with them a little bit on that 2-minute PD thing. I contacted James Lang and I said, hey, can I do a small teachings project with my university as a Board of Governors Teaching Chair? He said, have at her, go ahead and let me know how it goes. So I put in a proposal. Let's do a series of 20, 24, maybe 30 small little 3-minute videos that can go up on the website, like under the Reset area or anywhere's anywhere's in there that says, if you want to know how to pass things out effectively, that sounds like a small thing, so that people are actually listening to you while you pass stuff out, here's how you do it. But what I want to do is I don't want to do it. I want to go to all the instructors across the university who we know have great ideas, and I want to say to somebody like, Sheila, I know that you value student voice a great deal in your classroom. How do you get people talking? And you'll tell me in like 2 or 3 minutes, and boom, we'll put that video up there. So when a professor says, I got to get an idea of how I can end class, because my class is always, effective class endings. And maybe Aaron Taylor is really good at that or something. I'm just picking a name out of that. And so he comes on and does a short video, 3-minute video on how to end your class effectively. So this is what I'm hoping the project will be during the course of this year. I'm worried I'm not going to finish it, so I may ask the teaching center if I can come back the next year and work on it and finish it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I got to rely on the teaching center to help me out. But that's what my project is. The thing about being
board chair is you never really leave.
Yeah. So I've
10 years later, here you are.
Yeah, here you are interviewing. That's right.
I was actually just reading, like literally this morning, one of his other books on distracted, why students are distracted and what you can do about it in your classroom. Great book, and it might be useful for some of the other working groups that you've got. What I like about what you were just saying as well is, again, I think that's such an important role that the Board of Governors teaching chair in particular has to play, right? You need to be, you're kind of the figurehead, right? In ways that, like, the teaching center staff are very busy. The board chair has to be sort of the more public face, taking that initiative, reaching out to people, pulling people together, and drawing on the great pool of teachers that we have on this campus. You can't do everything. You shouldn't do everything on your own. There are so many great teachers on this campus. It's about knowing how to find them and how to reel them in, for 2 minutes. So what do you want to do in your second year? So you've got these ongoing projects. There's more of the nuts and bolts work of the teaching center that the chair contributes to. Do you want to talk more about what your thoughts are about your next year and beyond?
Yeah, so the small teaching video is what we're going to do this year, but the way to do it, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this year one of the foci was to go to individuals, tap them on the shoulder and said, hey, we'd love to have you speak at Spark this year. Can you think about putting in a proposal? Yeah. And so a number of us went and tapped on a lot of shoulders and said, love for you to consider putting in a proposal at Spark this year. And I'm going to do the same thing with the video. I had, when I did my project coming into this position, I had a lot of names given to me by deans, by the teaching center, and others to say, have you talked to this person yet? And this year, even though that project's done, I have continued to go to some professors and sit down over coffee with them and say, I heard about you the other day that you like to do this, this, and this in your class. Could you tell me about it? And I had this wonderful conversation with a nursing prof just recently, and I said, what do you do in your classroom? Because this particular professor has a learning disability. And they said, because I have a learning disability, I teach in a way where I'm more empathetic, where I think like my students. So here's what I do. And I'm like, wow. Would I really like to come to your class? And so this year, I'm going to do more of that. I'm going to approach faculty, instructors, and say, could I drop in on your class, and can we have a conversation about how you can contribute some of your great ideas to the whole university? And the more we do that, like let's say I go talk to 20 or 30 or 40 faculty and instructors this year, say, would you be willing to consider applying to be a teaching fellow? I've already approached a number of people. Would you be willing to put in a proposal for Spark? Would you be willing to contribute to one of the projects that we're doing or sit on this committee? So similar to what you've been doing for the last many years of involving yourself and being there, that's what I'm hoping to do all of this year. And as you say, I really want to go and talk to individuals, and I'll be talking to the same ones you've been talking to for the last 10 or 15 years. So.
But then there's so many newer great colleagues, right? Like, I don't think it's the case anymore. I think for a long time it felt like it was the same kind of 10 people were going back to the same well, all the time. Yeah. And I think it's so important, right? The board chair has to not just go talk to the same old, dirty dozen, whatever, but go talk to, like, I am so floored by the number of new instructors, right? And you happen to hear about their teaching, or I happen to see something from them in a different context and immediately sort of pounce on them in exactly the same way. Like, I want you to apply for teaching fellowship, right?
That's great. I mean, I'm jealous 10 times a day. And I work in a hallway with brilliant minds. I'm often telling people that this guy over here, and this guy over here, this woman over here, they blow me away with what the research are doing, but the teaching to do. So they do things in their classrooms that I say, man, I'm going to steal that idea because that's so brilliant. And early on in my career, beg, borrow, and steal was my motto. And so, honestly, I think people do things so much better than me that I think if I just go and take their ideas and use them, then they'll be effective. And so I try stuff out all the time. And I like to drop in on people and ask them, what are you doing about this? How do you write your lesson plans? How do you do your course outline? And always stealing ideas. So I think we should give our colleagues opportunities to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we have our Open Doors program, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And I like to see that happen more than just once or twice a year. I like to see people have the freedom to say, hey, Sheila, can I come watch your class? And just as a normal part of our behavior to go watch each other.
Yeah. Why does that matter? I'm gonna push on that a little bit because that program matters enormously to me, and I agree. It's about these conversations. It's about beg, borrow, and steal. It's about, I saw a presentation at Spark from a colleague who has been here only a few years and has figured something out, that I had not figured out at that stage of my career, and I am absolutely going to steal what she talked about in her presentation. Thought, oh, you have figured something out here that I've been struggling with. It happened more than once at Spark this past year. Why does that matter, that point of connection, these conversations between colleagues across generation, across discipline as well? Because I think that's an important thing that the board chair should be doing.
Yes, yep.
But just to improve teaching practice on our community, why do those conversations matter?
Well, because teaching is a disposition. Teaching is an attitude. It is a way of thinking about a human being. I heard about a professor a few years ago at the University of Pittsburgh, or it might have been Carnegie Mellon a university, and she, because of cancer, lost her voice. And she was an English literature teacher. But she convinced her dean to let her teach that semester. She couldn't speak a word. She taught the whole semester English literature. Now, and I bring this up to my students all the time because they're going to become teachers. And I said, some of you equate teaching with talking. That's what your definition of teaching is if you get right down to it. She never spoke a word, but her course evaluations were off the chart. People loved her course. How did she teach a course without speaking a word? So when people are like that, are able to teach me a thing about how people learn, like they focus on learning rather than on talking or having something to say, I see that happening all over our campus. People do innovative things. People bring in they'll bring in what's happening in the moment in these young people's lives, and they use it in such a way that I go, whoa, I never even thought of that. And so I think having a disposition of always being concerned about the learner requires that we have to be willing to change a lot. Because I used an illustration here, well, I'll give you an example. I used an illustration of Little House on the Prairie and blank stares. I'm like, haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, do you? No. And in fact, I heard a guy speak this past week, and he was talking about writing letters, and he actually held a letter up, and he was being facetious, but he said, this is what a letter looks like. And he says, you put a stamp on it. Well, what he was basically saying is that this generation is completely different than my generation. And I have to keep new, and so I have to listen. I have to have my antennas up. I have to, like you did at Spark this year, you see things that other people are doing, and I realize that I can't rest on my laurels. I have to change. I don't have to be somebody else. I have to be me, but I have to think in terms of being able to get the message across effectively. So that takes a willingness and a disposition to be a learner myself first and foremost before I can help my students learn.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important.
Yeah, we learn so much from each other. I mean, from the research as well, certainly not all, but I think many of us try to keep up with different aspects of the scholarship of teaching and learning, as well as not just what our colleagues here are producing, but what, folks like James Lang, have written over the years. But it doesn't have to be that, and we've tried to bring that in, whether it's the ISW or Reset or these conversations for more than a decade now. If you don't ever want to read this scholarship, you don't have to, but talk to one other teacher, two other teachers, drop in and see what somebody's doing. I still remember one of the first iterations of the Doors Open program years ago now, sitting in on one of Olu's stats classes, and I'm a historian. I was quite sure I was not going to understand his lecture, his class that day, and I didn't. But what I saw was a gifted teacher with a rapport and a warmth, and people were laughing. Apparently there's funny stuff in stats. I mean, I don't know, but there were stats jokes being made, and the students understood it, but he had them. He had them, a discipline that you might not associate with warmth and creativity and humor, and just sitting in somebody's classroom like that, and now for me it's newer colleagues. That I just desperately want to sit in on their classes and say, what are you doing? Because, you're clearly doing something really amazing. And have it be recognized. So maybe can I shift that next? Because we've talked a bit about, again, the need for the board chair to be kind of that visible face, raise the profile, continue to make excellent teaching visible on campus. What are some other ways we need to keep working on that? Recognizing good teaching. I love the stand up, the words of our actual students. That's great. What are some other things that the you specifically as the board chair, or maybe in general, can sort of think about how else do we continue to promote quality teaching?
Well, I think quality teaching is important. And for instance, I will just say this, Michelle Helstein, our provost, made a statement during Spark.
Her talk was so good.
Her talk was so good. And I asked her afterwards, can I quote you?
Oh, nice.
And she said, yes, you can. She said that teaching has to be the center of our university.
Yeah.
And having the provost say that and recognize that is important. So I think it's important that we put that out there, you know, and she recognizes it. So I say we keep at it. We keep at the provost to say, let's continue to bring this to the center, make sure it's always the center, make sure the teaching center is well funded, make sure that the things that the teaching center is doing is well promoted, like Spark, and our magazine is out there and available to people to read it. I also think it's important that the Excellence in Teaching Award continue to be a big thing. I love how we celebrate good teachers here. And they should be recognized and nominated by students. And I think we should have, I kind of wish we could do it twice a year, have nominations before Christmas, after Christmas, you know, all that type of stuff. But I do think it's important that we recognize good teaching. Research, incredibly important. We all know that, right? Service, absolutely. The university wouldn't run without good service. Teaching, that's what we're about. I want the University of Lethbridge to be a place where everybody says, that's the best history program in Canada. That's the best chemistry program in Canada. That's the best engineering program in Canada. Our new rural medical program, the best in Canada. Education, the best in Canada. Why? Because when I go there, I learn how to become a chemist, a historian, a teacher, because of the great teachers that they have at that university. And so research is going to always continue to be important at this university, and I think that's important, but we need to make sure we keep teaching at the forefront, because it is difficult and it requires us to work hard to be good teachers. So the more we keep the standard high, the more people say, I'm going to try to reach that standard.
Yeah. And we know what it looks like.
We know what it looks like.
It's not as if defining excellence in teaching is a mystery. We know it's observable. It's it's an evidence-based practice as much as research, and so to have them be on the same level, be treated the same way. There's never going to be the money, right? I mean, part of the recognition for research is, you know, our colleagues and the natural scientists get, you know, very large grants, and you know, that's never going to happen for teaching, and that's fine. It's about continuing those conversations around excellence. I like what you're saying about too. If the U of L was known for excellence, is already known, could continue to be known for excellence in teaching. And for me, it's about the community as a whole. Like, I don't even need it to be discipline specific so much as what I always tell people is, like, this is a campus wide, right? The excellence in teaching is not in fact concentrated in any one pocket or discipline or, you know, physical location on the hill. We have a community here that now has extraordinary depth. We are well past the time when it was only like the same 10 people doing things. We're so far past that now.
You and I, well, I could probably, everybody watching this, we can point to teachers and instructors in our past, may not even remember what they taught, but we remember how they made us feel. We remember how they made us go home that night and be so thrilled with ourselves because of what a teacher said to us or did for us, or how they made us feel. I was telling you a story earlier. I just was reading this morning about a medical professor who every year, one of the activities she does in her class is she asks all of her students to bring a family photo. And they stand up and they talk about their whole family, because as medical practitioners, they really do need to be in touch with this sick person is part of a family. So she has them bring a family photo and they talk about it. During the course of that year, her husband died. So she was dreading the following year when she was going to do that example with her first year medical students. But come September, they start their class off. She told them all to bring in their family photos, and she was really worried that she was going to break down in the class. And as she walked into the classroom, she noticed the class was double in size. She never announced to anybody she was going to do it, but her first year students remembered it, and they all came back into the first year, this new cohort of first year students, to be there to support her as she did this exercise of people talking about their families, because they knew that her husband had died that year. That woman did something awoke something in those students that they loved her, respected her. That's through teaching. Yeah. And I think all of us can look back on somebody who changed our life through teaching. Well, I think that's what we all want. We all want to have that type of impact on our students. I think we can, and I think we have our instructors and our professors that are reaching out to us saying, I do want to be that, so help me be that.
Yeah.
And I think that's our role.
Yeah. So just to wrap up on that point, and again, you've already alluded to this, one of the really important jobs that I think the board chair has to do is recruit, right? Recruit future fellows, like just get people involved with all the great things that the Teaching Center does. So maybe just quickly to conclude, what is your pitch when you're trying to get people involved, whether it's to get them to apply to be a teaching fellow next year, hopefully board chair down the road after that? How do you encourage someone who maybe hasn't been involved with the center before to come get involved? What's your pitch?
I have a conversation and I tell them how much they know about the Teaching Center. Most people know the work that they do because most faculties have somebody who's been involved with it. Yeah. And I go to them and I say, you know, I know about your reputation. I know about your teaching in your classroom. I pick carefully the people I go talk to. And I say, have you ever considered being part of the Teaching Center or maybe being a teaching fellow? Almost all of them say, is that an option? Like, I haven't really read the application. I said, let me tell you a little bit about it and why. Because I know, like usually I know when people are doing projects or doing something or their research. And I say, how would you like to do that research through the Teaching Center and have some, you know, some help with that? And you could be part of the bigger picture of excellence in teaching. And when you talk to people, just sit down and talk to them. They may say, well, this next, for instance, I talked to one person and they said, my next year is really busy. I have a special project I'm doing. I can't consider it this year, but would you come back and talk to me next year? So you can bet I'm going this year. So it usually starts with a conversation, and through that conversation, I get to find out if that person might be interested in serving in some capacity, and then I nudge them a little bit, use guilt a little bit, you know, whatever works. And I would say, let's continue this conversation. I'm not in a rush. I don't like being rushed, so I'll have a conversation with them early, long before application, and then I'll come back and say, let's talk about this even further. Yeah. Usually over coffee.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Chris. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish in your second year
thank you.
Of your board chair.
Yeah, much appreciated.